Hello everybody. This is going to be a quick tutorial to demonstrate how to get geometry out of Unreal if in the event you might have downloaded a project of someone else's, or if you've imported an asset into your game and you're having a difficult time working with someone else's work. I'm looking at a channel on YouTube here by the good folks at VR Dream Plus. And they are offering a free download to 3 gigs of content that they have imported into a very beautiful architectural visualization scene. And they've given the file away here, which is quite awesome. They're giving a 2.9 gig file away for free and encouraging people to learn from their own experience. One of my students had pointed out, after having downloaded the RAR file, that when they got into the project, some of the textures weren't behaving the way as they had expected. So I'm just going to go through the process here. I've downloaded the RAR and expanded it. Now I've already run the project once. I'm going to be using 4.25. I'm not sure what version this person used, but I've only got 4.23 and 2.5 on my computer, so I'm going to use 4.25 for now. Upon recording this, 4.26 is out, but I haven't installed it yet. So I'm not sure what version they used to make this project, so there could be some conflicts with versioning. I'm not entirely sure what the problem is. When I choose the version and load it up, I'll warn everyone the first time you run this project, it does take a considerable amount of time for Unreal to do all of the compiling that it needs. And even now you can see it's taking some time. Even with the project been run once, it still takes some time to get going here. And the one thing I want to point out when working with other people's projects, everybody has their own workflow. They have their own naming convention. So we can't really be too terribly critical of what other people do. We don't know what pipeline they're working in. We don't exactly understand what it is they're trying to achieve in the teams that they're working in. So I'm not going to be critical of things like names, etc. But I do have to solve a puzzle here because this is an awesome piece of geometry. The couch in this scene is currently the one that we've been having trouble with. If we look back at the video on YouTube, we can see it's beautifully textured. It's got some lovely fabrics described in the shader. But in here, when I see this this couch, I can something is broken. And when I loaded the project, we saw some errors. So maybe there's some dependencies that didn't get pushed across when the person exported the project. And once again, we can't be critical about that. Now, what I want to do is take this out into Substance, take a look at it in Maya, take a look at it maybe in Blender as well, just to look at how this person has, first of all, created the geometry, if it's good for my production. And then take a look at what they did with their UVs, just to make sure that, you know, this is functional. Do I have to rebuild the UVs if need be? Or maybe I can just get away with it and put it into Substance and see how it behaves there. Now, word of caution, what I want to do is export this as an FBX. I could just simply highlight the object here and export the asset. But you'll notice that it has a transform here that's sort of out in the middle of space somewhere. So just to make it easier on myself, I'm going to set up a new level, default, and I'm just going to drag the couch from the package. Now, when I first looked at this, all these directories are here. Can't really find exactly the meshes, so I have to dig around for a while. I did locate the couch in the WUTI folder, the WUTI file, and it's called Shafa 102613. Interesting name. Regardless, I'm just going to throw it out into my scene. I'm going to set it to a location of 0, 0, and 0. I'm going to blow away the ground plane. I don't need it. And for some strange reason, this artist has rotated the object some strange angle, which is fine. But if this were my project, I would just, bring it in as, a very straight, a straight object in my scene, wherever I generated it in Maya, Blender, and then do the rotation inside of Unreal. But they might have done the entire architectural design in a tool like Maya, and then just one by one brought in all of their different assets. I do want to point out that you might think you could just simply enter into the object itself here and begin to rectify the textures. But when I edit it inside of Unreal, I'm met with this interesting moment here, where I'm looking at a language that I don't understand. It immediately jumped into the event graph. I'll take a look at the tabs along the top, and I can see here that each one of these objects is independent. They're uniquely named static meshes, which might be cool if I, for example, wanted to animate each one of these pieces separately. But if the purpose of this is just to keep it static, then I might want to combine all of these shapes in a tool like Maya. Now the materials, they have strange names that might be difficult later on as I move through the project, trying to, locate the different pieces of my geometry to try to texture later on. And I can see here that in this set of objects, there's a whole lot of stuff. Yeah, so this is a puzzle that we need to solve. So I'm going to just simply grab this and export it as an FBX. I've already got some folders prepared on my computer. I've kept the Unreal project that I downloaded in the same folder that I'm entitling Couch Project. And I'm just going to export this FBX as a couch. I don't think I need to worry too much about any of the settings. Everything should be okay. I'm just going to hit export. And I've got a couple of tools already preloaded here. For purposes of texturing, I want to use Substance Painter. It's just such a fantastic tool, very fast with the default materials that come with it, to sort of see what the heck is going on with our object here. So I'm going to keep my resolution at 1024, load that geometry in, and just take a quick look at what's going on here. We should see over here in the top left the 4 different shaders that have been applied to this object. So I'm just going to, out of curiosity, just start throwing textures at it. So I can see when I hover over with this fabric texture, there's a specific region that has already been defined as a material ID that is separate from the feet. It's separate from this blanket and the pillows. I'm just going to throw something else at the pillows. They're their own separate ID. And just for fun, I'll throw a shiny texture at that, the pillow and the blanket, and a wood texture down here onto the feet. So I mean, for all intents and purposes, I could just call this a day and export my textures from here. But I'm gonna have a difficult time later, I think, trying to figure out what these different shader addresses are, what these different shader names are when I get back into the other tool. So it might be a little bit of overkill, but I think a little bit of time spent in a tool like Maya really can't hurt if you just want to rename the shaders. So I'm going to bring in this couch. Now, I just want to point out this checkbox here, remove duplicate shading networks. I had this checked off in my first run through of this, and it actually combined a bunch of those different shaders together into a single name. So by unchecking that box, we should maintain all of our unique shaders. So I'm going to import it. It should center off in the center of my scene. Yeah, it did. Now, had I exported it directly from that other person's level, it would have shot it off into space, and then I would have had to done some recentering. But now might be an opportunity, because I'm in a modeling tool, just to take a look at this from, up top and reposition the geometry, rotate it, put it back sort of at a best guess, because I'm not sure exactly how I want to use this moving forward in my scene. So I'm just going to center it back off. Yeah, and then see if I can't use a built-in, a wonderful tool that's in here under our good friend, the Hypershade editor. It will list all the shaders that are currently in use. And I could start poking around in here, changing colors and things like that, but to discover where these different shaders are. But I can right-click, and if this works, I could select the objects by material. So once more, when I imported it, I had that one checkbox turned off. That's very important. And I can see that I have isolated those two pillows. Now I'm working on a Mac, so I have to be mindful of your Windows experience out there when I say this. But if I hold down Control and double click on the shader itself, I can quickly gain access to rename the node. And I want to just triple check, right click on that shader, select the objects with that material. It's the pillows. So I'm going to hold Control, double click on it, and just call it pillows. All right, cool. What about this one? Are you in use? Select objects with material. Okay, so Control, double click, and I'm going to call that pillow blanket. Okay, cool. How about you? Are you in use right now? Yeah, you're the main couch. So Control, double click. I'll just call this really creative name, couch main. And this one here, are you in use? You're the feet. Okay, Control, double click. I'll call this couch feet. So I'm going to just think for a second before I export this back out. I'm starting to get a naming convention here that's nice and organized. I am using camel casing. I do encourage my students to do that. So I'm just going to go back into these names and correct them here. I'm going to call them couch pillows. This might help me down the line to stay a little bit more organized. I am using camel casing. I've come from a programming background, so I do like my variables to be named very nicely. Couch, pillow, and blanket. Sure. And the reason I'm doing this is so that down the line through the workflow, it's going to be really easy for me to access those different textures, shader names, and know exactly where I want to apply my textures. Okay, so I think we're done in Hypershade. I'm just going to grab my geometry, just clicking on it here in the outliner. And while I'm at it, I'm actually going to rename this to couch. Highlight that, file export, selection. I'm going to shoot it out as an FBX. I think I could just overwrite this one, but just to be sure, I am going to just iterate on it so I don't destroy the work I've already done. And I'm going to call it couch with renamed textures. And I think all of my settings are okay over here. I'm not going to put out any animations or lights, anything from the Maya scene. So I just need my smoothing groups and my smooth mesh. That's pretty much it. I'm going to export the selection. Now, just for fun, I'm going to hop over to another tool that I love dearly, Blender. And I'm just going to load this FBX in. And just to see how things are behaving. Now, I could have done this renaming of textures and shaders in Blender as well. It takes a moment here for all of this data to come into memory. And I'm just going to go over to the shading view and check out whether or not I have the appropriate names. And you can start to see how the workflow has just gotten a whole lot better. So there's couch main, there, sweet. Everything's got nice names. There's a bunch of extras sort of hanging out in here that I'm not entirely sure what they do, but this person, Shafa, has created them for some reason. But that's okay. It's not a lot of data in the FBX file, and ultimately it's not going to change the world. I'm just going to leave this tool open here and head over back into Substance. I'm going to set up a new file now that I've created this renamed FBX file, and I'm going to start over again with this couch with renamed texture and see what happens when I bring it in. I do want my students working at 1024 because we're going to have to share this all online using GitHub. So I'm going to keep the texture size low for this project, just so we have faster transfer of files on the internet. I don't need to save this one. It should come in just fine. And I'm going to position this so I can see it quite nicely. And just to point out, whatever's in this viewport, when I click this symbol up here, it's going to render that viewport in Iray. So I don't want to spend too much time in Substance, but just to sort of brag about this tool, it's so incredibly powerful. Now, these textures have been created in another tool outside of this house, another tool called Substance Designer. And it gives us the power to do some pretty incredible things. Now, first off, I do want to look up here. I see that the names are beautiful. Now I can read clearly what each one of these shaders are. And now that I've just dropped on this, and I'm using Fabric Rough because it's a nice texture for this couch. If I look down at the properties down below, I might take a moment to just consider, do I want to change the color of my couch? Do I want it to be a nice beige couch? I'm going to grab a different fabric for I'm going to make my pillows denim. I think the default denim texture looks absolutely awesome. And just to have some fun, I'm going to throw a shinier texture at the pillow and the blanket. Now it's called plastic, but we can have some fun doing some interesting things with our roughness, just to see later on how shiny things can look, or what the reflectivity of these textures will look like inside of tools like Unreal or Blender. Yeah, so one other piece of the puzzle. I like this wood texture down here. I'm going to throw those on the feet like so. And just out of curiosity, how are things looking over here in iRay? Just going to fire that up, and yeah, this is looking really slick. I'm liking what I'm seeing here. And just in case I need it later, I am going to save this file, and I'm just going to put it into my couch project. Couch texturing. I'll fix the spelling of that in a moment. Sure. All right, so now we can just shoot all of these textures out, and it's going to shoot a lot of textures out. And one thing I do absolutely adore about Substance is that they have all of these different presets. So even like Arnold, the AI standard texture is there. Actually, I think I'm going to just try that just for curiosity, because I do want to show people how to wire this stuff back up inside of Arnold. There is also this one here that I've just recently started working with, is the RenderMan free renderer that comes out of the good folks over at Pixar. And you can get a student version or a non-commercial license of RenderMan, which plugs right into Maya, which is super beautiful. And then there is the Unreal Engine 4 packed, which is awesome. And when they say packed, 3 textures are going to be combined into one file. And then we can pull out the red, green, and blue channels out of that one file and apply them to 3 different components of the shader inside of tools like Unreal. But maybe just for curiosity, I'm just going to send this out as an Arnold AI standard. I can choose the depth of my colors. I am just going to go out as pangs, PNG files, and that is awesome. I do need to be careful where I'm putting this thing. And maybe I will put a new folder in here, because this is going to create a bunch of stuff. Create couch textures. And yeah, this is Substance at work. I mean, it is so powerful and so fast. And we can see the names already, base color, metalness, roughness, normal, height. So wonderful. If the texture that we chose has a normal map associated to it, it will put a normal map in. And it's done this for each of the different channels. Now I should see, yeah, right built into the name. And this is why renaming those textures in Maya or Blender is so valuable, because you can see clearly now where each one of these textures should be assigned. I'm going to harken back to a comment I made earlier. It's not the developer's problem that they named those shaders what they did. And I only say that because we're so lucky to just have this couch. Somebody spent an awful large amount of time trying to make this thing beautiful for us. And yeah, we just get to drag and drop it into our world. But yeah, sometimes we got to do some cleanup. I'm just going to quit Substance. I think I'm done with that tool. And now that I'm back in Blender, I'm just going to want to see how these textures play. Now, I spent most of my time in Blender in the last 10 years. I'm a real proponent of open source, but I'm learning to love Maya more and more. It's a fantastic tool. They're both good at their respective jobs, but I do really like the play that I can have in the shader editor of Blender. And because some of my students are new to this space, I just do want to point out, and I think every tutorial online says this, go into the preferences of Blender and turn on NodeWrangler. It's your best friend. I don't know why Blender just doesn't have it turned on. Because when we start to choose our different shaders, I'm just going to work on couch main. And that's the little drop down here to jump around, nicely named. It's really easy with NodeWrangler to establish networks. And all I have to do is press Control and T, and these nodes get created down below, and I'm just clicking and dragging them into position. What's awesome is the good folks who developed this geometry have already done the hard work of UV unwrapping. And I don't think that the UVs are necessarily what I would prefer to see, but that is fine and well. It's not my project, and I did see over in Substance that the texture is laid out very nicely, so I'm not going to worry too much about their setup. Now I do have to be careful in here, like if I'm selecting things and I start changing materials, then I'm going to potentially assign new materials to things. So I'm just going to click out in the gray space here to deselect. Make sure I'm working on the right texture. So couch main was the one I was working on. I already had some nodes set up. I had highlighted the principal BSDF shader. I just highlighted that, Control T to get my nodes. It's pulling in the texture coordinates from my UVs, pushing it into my mapping, driving that into my image texture. And just to see what's going on, I'm going to open up that image from that file. Put that into my couch project. And there is the couch main base color right there. There's a ton of files in here that Substance created for us. So I'm just going to put that into this node here by simply clicking that Open Image button there. And then in my viewports, I can just turn on the textured view, the material shading, just to see what's going on. Et voila. Now, if I press this button over here, it's going to get into a rendered view. And I do want to point out that for those of you new to Blender, coming in from Maya maybe, the render properties are over here. So this real-time rendering engine is fantastic and only getting better every day. But if you want something more like Arnold, Cycles is your choice there. I do love the fact that in the shader view, there's already a bunch of look devs. Look devs relate back to this environmental lighting that's happening down here on the sphere. And we can find different look devs just by dropping down that little drop down. It's very fast. So if I want to see what this looks like in a dark room, I can click on that. Now, just to sort of explain shader networks a little bit. So this thing's looking shiny. I could just, mess around with my roughness, like so. You can see the couch up there is getting shiny. But I do want to pipe in the texture for roughness. Now, keep in mind, It's kind of funny to me because I pushed these textures out for Arnold. Now, Substance doesn't have a setting for a preset for Blender necessarily for cycles or for Eevee. So what you're going to discover is that these textures will work. They'll work in all kinds of different applications. So don't feel like you're stuck when you export something for one specific software from Substance. If you chose, say, Arnold, for example, those textures are going to work in other places. So this is my file. This is where I'm loading in the data from that RGB PNG file. And I can just quickly duplicate this with Shift-D, and I'll position it here. I want to drive the texture coordinates in from the UVs into the mapping of whatever textures I'm putting on. I just drag that to my vector. And then my color data, I'm going to push over to my roughness. But first, I need to open the image, find that couch main roughness. You'll see that the language is pretty consistent across all softwares. So this is the nice thing about physically based shaders. They're starting to really hone in on those words that are so important for us to understand. So the roughness channel now is being driven by an image that I have back here. I'll just take a quick look at it. This roughness channel here. Let me zoom in on it just so you can see that it's a black and white channel, and it's just describing areas of shiny and less shiny, less rough spots on that texture. Cool. And I could do the same for normals and things like that if I wanted to, but this is really not about a Blender tutorial, but rather just to get us sort of looking at this from a different perspective. Just to do it fast, if I want to worry about my pillows, I'm going to jump over there, click Control-T. I like to organize my nodes, open, find my pillows. Where's my pillows? Couch feet, pillows, base color. Now I made a mistake, and that's good, that's fine. Because I had that object selected, it applied that texture to that pillow alone. That is not what I wanted to do. So I'm going to undo that. I gotta be really careful with what I'm doing here. Make sure that I'm not just clicking around and highlighting stuff, because that is now taking in something else. So this actually is not a member of pillows, but this belongs to this other family called couch main. So I'm going to switch it back to tell that specific object to use that that texture, that shader. Deselect, and then hop over to my pillows. Strange that that's going back to black. That should be main couch. Why do I have all these shaders in here? Couch main. There we go. This object is a member of couch pillows. Okay. For some reason, I've got old shader names in here from another project. Oh, I hadn't closed Blender, so they're still kicking around from a previous test that I was doing. So yeah, that's funny, because if we think back to what I had done over in Maya, I had renamed these to have that strong name couch and then the name of what I'm working on here. So please ignore these other shaders. They're kicking around from an old test that I was doing. Anywho, so let's try that again at the speed of industry. So I'm going to jump to my couch main. That's a nice setup. I'm going to jump over to couch pillows, highlight the shader, Control T with NodeWrangler installed. Cool beans. Now I can see those have turned black. That's awesome. I open it up. I'm going to jump into my project file and grab that pillow base color, couch pillows base color. Cool. And that's that start of that denim. And just because it's fast, I can grab this and Shift D, drag it down there, throw the vector in, and then I can output that color to roughness and then change the file to the couch pillows roughness. And I'm not going to get into the metalness or anything like that. Couch, pillow, and blanket. I have something highlighted. This is the mistake I made before because I don't want to reassign this by, I got to deselect out here. Everything's deselected. And then I'm going to jump over to my couch, pillow, and blanket. Oh, changed it. It's so strange. That is so strange. Blender just crashed. Fun times. Well, we are pushing some heavy data around, so we can just live with the fact that Blender crashed. But once you have those shader networks set up, and I should have been saving my Blender file, I've just proven the case. Anyway, yeah. I've just lost all my work in Blender. But just for curiosity, I think Maya might sort of tolerate the situation a little bit better. I am going to save my scene in Maya so it doesn't explode. I'm going to go into my couch project, save this Maya file as couch, and just take a look in here at the shader networks that we've got for this object. So in Hypershade, I might only just do one for demonstration. I do love to see my nodes. So for example, I'll do couch main. I'm just going to right click on it and just graph that network. So I can see my nodes down here. And that way I can sort of hop around a little bit quicker between all of the different properties of the shader. I could drag out stuff or hit tab and put in different nodes here. But it's kind of nice in Maya to have all of these different settings available when you just click on things. So the color that I'm looking at, first things first, it's set to, by default, a Phong shader. And don't forget, I put that out as an Arnold shader. So if this was something I wanted to take farther inside of Maya, then I would reassign the shader to be an Arnold shader, and I'd have access to all of the different nodes. But this is the default Phong. And I mean, the UVs are what they are. I can just load in a file, and just to prove a point, I'm going to grab the test couch main base color and just throw that at that shader. And switch over to textured view, and et voila. So even though it's Phong, we're driving it with that bitmap data. It's a little shiny, but we don't get that full physically based shader experience that we would get from the Arnold shader. So maybe for the pillows, what I'll do is just switch the pillows over. I'll assign a new material here. And Arnold, I'm going to use there's the language that we saw inside of our good friend Substance Painter, the AI standard surface. And I'm going to give it a really great name. I'm going to call this my Arnold couch pillows. Because now our shader library is starting to grow, even on this just a simple project. And I'm going to head over to Hypershade. I should see that pop up in here now. There's my Arnold couch. I'm going to graph the network. And in my color channel, I'm going to drive in a file. And I'm going to select the pillows. It's in a different directory here. Couch project, couch textures, and couch pillows base. Cool, that's that denim color. It comes with a height map. Comes with a bunch of other stuff. So I can draw, clicking on these nodes, I can jump around easily and see in the property editor here over here. Now that I'm in a network, I can see things really quickly. Yeah. So all the other things like roughness, I can now load a file in for roughness. Couch pillows with roughness. Cool. And I could belabor this point and go through the whole process. I'm going to just leave it at that because we're getting a really nice result out here. Now, I'm not going to see everything renderable. I'm just going to throw out a Skydome light for Arnold and then switch my render view over to Arnold and see what happens here with these pillows. Fatal error. It's funny, everything's crashing. It's funny. I have to wonder how productions like Toy Story 4 or Soul or any of these projects get completed, or games like Cyberpunk. When this is a reality of our game, guys, this is what happens. But I always like to shoot my reports out to our good folks over at Autodesk. But I do completely digress into the realm of Maya and Blender, which have both crashed during this tutorial, which is fine. I'm not going to stop because this tool's not going to crash, right? It's not. So I'm just going to set up a whole new project. I'm not even going to work with the starter content. I don't need it. I don't want to duplicate that data again. I just want to prove a point here. And I'm going to throw this in as couch test. And this is a famous thing that I like to do. Couch test underscore and in big letters, delete me, because this is going to be deleted. I'm going to create that project. The nice thing about what's happening is that FBX file is not broken and those textures are still there. I'm not going to save anything in that world. Give this a moment to load up. And I'm going to just try to establish myself a couch inside this world. Yeah, one thing I really encourage people to do is build yourself some folders. I'm going to have some, I'm going to have some props, and I'm going to have some textures, and I'm going to have myself some levels. So all of my textures in here, I think, if all goes well and this doesn't crash, I can grab everything except for these TX files. That's not really useful for me right now. So I'm just going to make sure those are deselected. And the only thing I'm bringing in are my pings. I'm just dragging them directly into my textures folder, and they're being copied now. You have to be mindful of that. They're being literally copied over to the Unreal project directory. And in my props folder, I'm just going to use the import button here. And from my couch project, I'm going to grab the one that's called couch with renamed textures, because that's the one that's got all the goodies. It's got all the nicely named shaders. Takes a while. This is a big piece of geometry. And there is a bunch of sub-objects in it. So one thing that I might want to do is combine all of this in a tool like Blender or Maya. But it's nice because here are my shaders, you know, and they're already applied. So if I were to grab all of these things like so and just drag them onto my project, awesome. Because all of their transforms were already done in Maya, and don't forget that I reoriented the couch. I rotated it that interesting number of degrees just to get it back to sort of a straight axis there. So all of this is noise here. Like, wow, that's a lot of static mesh actors. But I might want to do some animation with each one of the pillows, or I don't know. So what I'm going to do is just keep them all highlighted and press this button up here, create a new folder. And I'm going to call this my couch, which is awesome. And I can collapse it. And I think if I just select that folder now, I can right click on it and I can select all of the descendants and then move that as a group, which is awesome. Now couch feet, when I double click on it, it's going to open up the node editor. And here we see we got our params, yeah? So what I want to do, and I like to work with 2 monitors, not just one, but I'm recording the screen, so I'm just going to make these 2 smaller. I'm going to switch my view options here to list so that I can see things a little bit quicker. Actually, no, I'm going to go for columns, so tiles, columns. There we go. And just stretch this over. Can I do that? Come on, Unreal. You know you want to. That's goofy. I thought it would let me see the file names. There we go. Oh, it's only got a certain distance? That's goofy. That is really goofy. That's too bad, because I can't see my names. Unreal. Guys, it's a file system. It's not rocket science. Anyway, I'm going to just mouse over these couch with renamed textures Shafa. So I'm looking at my props folder. Textures. That's going to be really difficult if I can't see the names of them. Anyway, so I got to be couch with renamed textures, pillows. And I'm working on the shader called couch feet. So I'm just going to highlight the ones that are called couch feet. There's couch feet, couch feet, couch feet, and then the couch feet normal. Roughness. And if all goes right in my universe, oh, you deselected it. You are a bad, bad program. Bad program. Okay, so once I get back in here with those highlighted, I want to drag them into here, 5 texture samples. I can blow away this param here. And there's my texture sample for the color. So I should be able to just drag the RGB directly into the base color here. It takes a minute for the shader to compile. A little bit tricky now that I'm thinking, I'm seeing this, like Unreal's not giving me the textures names. It's kind of goofy, kind of weird. I mean, I can assume that this is the roughness. So I'm going to pump that into roughness up here. Unreal does a really great job of handling normal mattes. So if I just push the RGB into normal, it sort of just solves for that, which is amazing. Then when I press save, I'm going to compile the shader. I head back over to my scene. In theory, if all goes right in my world, yeah, there we go. Yeah, those feet are now wooden, which is awesome. And just to conclude this, I want to take a look at that other shader. I'm going to close this down. I'm going to look at that other shader known as, let me go in my props folder, couch main, because this is going to have the most visual impact. I'm going to go into couch main. I have to do the same thing. If I do 2 monitors, this would be so much more fun to just drag, you know, all of those images in from the other view here, because this is kind of tricky. Anyway, go back to my content, textures. I'm looking for all the stuff that's called main. Those are the pillows, pillows. Couch main roughness. And you know, it might be helpful right now just to rename these. I'm not going to do that, but you could literally just double click on these names and just shorten these file names down. We could have done that before importing them in the file system. But yeah, this is fine. I'm just going to grab this. I'm just going to hold shift and click. Do a multiple selection, just like we would in another tool like our operating system. I'm just going to drag this over into here, into my shader. Make that big again. Zoom out. I'm just zooming in with the scroll wheel and drag my different samples around so I can see what the heck's going on here. Then just get myself organized. Right click, drag with the hand. Pretty sure that's roughness. So I'm going to drag that into, maybe it's not roughness. This one is definitely normal. So I'm just going to drag this into my normal. And we can see immediately on the sphere here, we're getting some nice depth detail. I think this might be my roughness. I'm not sure. I can always go back to my folder for the project and just take a look at what's going on here. So that's metalness, actually. That is how metal this is it? And it's black right now, so it's off. It's telling the system that this is not metal. So don't behave like metal. And that's the beautiful thing about PBR, is that we can control each one of these different things. So what are you then? Guessing you are my base color. Feed that in. I should double check that that is my base color. It looks much, much brighter here. That's okay. We'll deal with those issues once they come up. So this one's much brighter. What's this one? Couch main. This is roughness. It's how rough the surfaces are. Yeah, Cool. Let me reorganize our nodes so that they're nice and packed together. Cool. Now, if we had rendered out the ambient occlusion maps from our good friend Substance Painter, we could pump that in as well. But yeah, I'm just going to save that up. Got to save every time so that you can compile the shader. And then jump back in over here and see what's going on. It's looking really good. Yeah, it's looking really good. I like it a whole lot. I'm gonna go in here and just see if, yeah, I got lots of nice texture going on here. Beautiful. Yeah, so that's the process, my friends. Took me some time to sort of solve this puzzle, but I did want to take you into those sort of those deeper crags of, you know, renaming textures in Maya, using hypershade so that you can have an easier time finding things. In hindsight, I'd probably take a moment in here to look at my naming convention of things before I brought them into Unreal, because these are a little bit long, and I'm starting to see here that I can't even into this view here under columns, like I can't change the column width. Like, come on, Unreal. Like, hello, Epic. This should be a thing. I could do that in all of my operating systems, so why can't I do it here? I guess they're assuming that stuff's not supposed to be named really long. Anyway, so taking the moment in here to change the names would be really quite helpful. Yeah. Plus, I mean, if you think about it, this is the name of my FBX file. This is the name of my shader that I renamed inside of Maya. There's the channel. So had I named my FBX just couch, like if I had worked with the first one I had created, then that would be the file name. All of these would be like that. And I could create an automator script inside of Mac that could just delete these names if I wanted to. But this might be a nice thing to do. I can't change you know, it doesn't matter if I change these now. They're not dynamically linked to the Unreal file the way they would be if, say, we were using them in something like Blender, which crashed, or Maya, which crashed. I do find that funny. But anyway, this was an Unreal, what I'd like to call the round trip, taking geometry out of one project that's problematic, taking it into other tools like Maya to rename all of our textures to something more friendly, get it into Substance, work with it there, get these gorgeous textures out that they've given us for free, and then back into Unreal with proper addresses. Yeah, so that's my tutorial. I hope you've learned something, and yeah, happy texturing, folks. Bye-bye.